I'm sick of bye weeks. I want to announce a game.
Brutus the Peanut Head coming to Happy Valley for the whiteout.
Ohio State averaging 56 points a game the last 4 games in Coach Shoup. We trust the Lions defensive coordinator is going to earn that paycheck this week. Blue-White Tailgate is coming up next.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Blue-White Tailgate presented by Coors Light. Steve Jones, Trey Bauer, Todd Sadowski. What was the deal in that open? You had to show us up and be the intelligent one? What was that deal?
It just came to me, fellas. Look, I can only go down from here, right? The rest of the show, I'll just be bombing.
He's spouting stats. I mean,
Yes.
come on.
I had Brutus the Peanut Head. I mean, come on.
I like
that. Tough to top
one. So we know what the fun side of the set is.
Yes. Yes.
It's a whiteout. You never experienced that as a player, but you've been on the sideline for that when you've seen it. When you see that, what do you think?
It's unbelievable. I mean, it's so loud. I mean, the students are fired up. The alums are fired up. I mean, it's a great atmosphere, and there's no reason that's the #1 place to play in the country.
I mean, exactly. You bring in a series of recruits, they look around and go, really? This is the way it is? It's a huge influence. Now they have a bye week, Todd. They have to come off a bye week, and Penn State's record is mixed off of bye weeks.
Yeah, 15-12 overall. They've lost the last 3 coming off bye weeks. I think that has a lot to do with the competition. Typically, your bye weeks are starting into conference play. So, you try to set those up to face the better teams and get that week off before you're playing a big rival like Ohio State. And mixed results so far, 15-12.
And that brings us to Frankly Speaking, presented by Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships. James Franklin on how he handled the second bye week.
Yeah, we actually did less. We actually did less this bye week. Again, that goes back to kind of learning from our experiences, to learning about what's going on and the effects of what we're dealing with, to make sure that we can get to the game and we're as fresh and fast and healthy as we possibly can be.
There is a fine line, Todd, between being ready, but also having the legs to do it.
Yeah, I'm Trey. That's Todd. Yes, I agree with that. The fact is that less is more sometimes. The fact is that they've got a young team, they've got some injuries, and the fact that Penn State can have a week off and rest some of their guys, I think is a good thing for them.
What do you think, Trey?
He pounced on you, didn't he? Wow. I just think that Ohio State, when you say they're rolling, it's an understatement. You're going to be calling basketball games soon enough.
Yes.
Some of the numbers that Ohio State's putting up looks like basketball scores, 66, 50, 52. 56 in the last 4 games. It's pretty impressive.
And Geno Lewis knows, obviously, Ohio State's on a roll.
I know being from Pennsylvania, Ohio is a very, a rival state for me. And this game is here right now. This is the game that we're focused on, and this is the biggest game that we're probably going to play this year so far. So we're really excited for the challenge. We're just going to go out there and trust in each other and just try to do the best we can.
Penn State is in its 22nd season in the Big Ten. There's only one school Penn State has played every year in football. That's Ohio State. Conversely, for Ohio State, there are only 2 schools they've played every year in the last 22 years, Michigan and Penn State. So is this a rivalry game?
It absolutely is a rivalry game. I mean, the fact is that, a lot of the kids that get recruited from Penn State and Ohio State, they recruit the same kinds of kids. Fortunately, we have the better students, and that goes without saying. But the fact is that we don't really like them. I don't like them personally. I was there in Columbus in 2007, and they're a bunch of. I don't want to get into it on the air, but it is definitely a rivalry game.
Can you see him in the control room about to hit the button?
Yeah.
That's a group on edge, which means we probably should go to upon further review with our good friend Fran Fisher.
Ohio State. We've had some dandies with those guys, like in 1963 when the Pete Lisk, Gary Klingensmith, Ralph Baker led Nittany Lions upset the Buckeyes 10-7. Who will forget the 63-14 thumping Penn State handed the Ohio State University's football team in 1994? Let's go back 50 years to the 1964 Nittany Lions with a remarkable record of its own. They were 1-4 in the first 5 games. After losing the homecoming game to Syracuse to go to that 1-4, Rip Engel's Chargers then defeated West Virginia and Maryland, and then proudly took their still-losing record into Columbus to battle the highly rated Buckeyes, a team that had defeated 6 opponents, holding them to a total of 39 points. The score was predictable, 28-zip. The unpredictable was that the 28 points were scored by Penn State. Penn State then won at Houston and ended the season with a 28-0 victory over Pitt. Things have not gone all that well recently, with Penn State winning just 3 of the last 10 matchups. Remember the 1994 63-14 win for the Nittany Lions? Same score last year, but the bad guys had the 63. And so we come to 2014 with Urban Meyer probably licking his chops. It's another prolific Buckeye offense, with the Penn State team having a problem with 2/3 of its game, offense and special teams. He will look to put a lot of points on the board, not necessarily to pile it on, but to impress recruits. We shall see. For WHVL's Blue White Tailgate Show, this has been Upon Further Review. I'm Fran Fisher.
Thank you so much, Fran. Yes, those 2005, 2008, and 2011 games, those are the ones that Penn State have won during the course of that streak. So coming up, we'll take a look at a Nittany Lion offense looking to kick it into another gear, and they'll need to against Ohio State. We'll talk about that as we continue with Blue White Tailgate after this. Okay, did I have to really relive that? Did I have to?
Is this a highlight show or a low light show?
Well, I mean, I heard Brad Nessel in the background. He's actually doing the game again this week. So, yeah, we can all hum memories to it. What about Trey trying to find balance against a very talented Ohio State defense?
Well, I think the fact that that Penn State has to play their best game by far to even have a chance to be in this game. Hopefully, I'm hopeful that they will. They had a bye week, and hopefully they can get it done.
Okay, we talked about the offensive line, Todd, but what about the ability of the tight ends to be an important part of that line mix?
Absolutely, and it's something that Urban Meyer is keeping his eye on. At his press conference, he mentioned the tight ends specifically. In fact, he mentioned the boatload of tight ends that could come at him, and he mentioned that the Buckeyes have had issues with multiple tight end sets. So I'm sure it's something that Coach Franklin and his staff have seen on film if Urban Meyer has noticed it. So look for a few more of the tight ends to get in the action.
He said specifically, he said, we have struggled against multiple tight ends. So we'll find out if that continues. Miles Diefenbach certainly is a guy that back in March and into early April, Penn State was counting on to be a key guy in the offensive line. So James Franklin right now, where does he stand?
If he's ready this week, we'd love him to have him in there, because I do think having him next to Donovan is really valuable. Those guys have experience together, communicate extremely well together. We'd love to have him. To think he's going to go from not playing at all to starting, that's probably not going to happen. If you can get him for a series or two, that'd be great. But we'll just see how the week plays out.
If it were to play out in his favor, Trey, what could it mean in terms of giving the offensive line a little boost?
Well, I think it would mean a lot. I mean, the fact is he's the leader. I mean, he's not only the leader of the offense, he's the leader of the team. Anyone that's been around this program knows that Miles is a guy that people respect and they look to him. And the fact that he's in the huddle, I think makes a big difference.
Yeah, and he's a senior. This is something James Franklin's talked about. You have Christian Hackenberg, a sophomore, who's about to play his 18th game versus a guy that's been around the block a lot.
Well, and Miles brings that levity and that personality to everything that he does, right? I mean, what a character and what a good guy. But you guys mentioned, the experience of those positions. How many times have we talked about the offensive line not having that wealth of experience to go to? What do we do in this situation? Well, we don't know. They're figuring out as they go. In the interior of the line, it's different than the tackles. Of course, Donovan Smith has experience outside, but Miles has that experience inside. So when the center and the guards don't know what's happening, they can look to him and say, what do we do in that particular situation? And I think it's a wealth of experience that he can bring to it and just say, guys, settle down, let's adjust here.
Yep.
Part of this, too, in the run game, guys, is that you have to talk a little bit about the running backs. They have to be able to set some things up to themselves as to how they attack things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the fact is everyone's been talking, including us on this show, about the offensive line, but, there's a lot of blame to go around. The fact is we're not averaging even 100 yards rushing a game.
Right.
I mean, the fact is that it's, the running backs, it's their responsibility as well to find the open hole.
Well, to have one side of the line that you can count on, as far as if Miles is there on that left side with Donovan, third and short,
Yes.
To be able to say, this is where we're going because we've got experienced guys that can get the job done, will be pivotal in the second half of this season.
Yeah.
And by the way, not every team's left-handed either. Most teams are actually right-handed when they run the ball. If that would be the left side, be a left-handed team, a little bit different look.
Yes.
James Franklin, by the way, on the run scheme and where it fits right now.
We run schemes that complement Bill's style. I think we run schemes that complement Zach's style. Again, it goes back to we need to be more physical up front. We need to be more consistent in how we're blocking things at the tight end position, at the offensive line, and even on the perimeter at the wide receiver position. It's not one factor. It's all of it together.
Perimeter blocking. Geno Lewis has actually been a really good blocker on the perimeter. They run that flanker screen with Hamilton. Geno Lewis plays well without the ball, but he didn't play a lot against Michigan. John Stroh looks at Geno Lewis.
Geno Lewis enters the Michigan game as one of Penn State's top offensive threats. He ranks third in the conference in receptions and yards per game. Lewis exits the Big House with just 3 receptions for 17 yards and a lot of questions when he doesn't start the game.
Yeah, based on the last the games all season long, looking at grades and how guys have been playing, missed assignments, execution, practice habits. There's always some health things that get into those things as well this time of year. There's a lot of factors. We also feel like some of those young guys deserve an opportunity.
A bye-week heart-to-heart between Franklin and Lewis to clear the air appears to have them both back on the same page.
Me and Coach, we just had a talk, about, basically the season, how it was going, and we just want to get on the same page about how things were going, and, basically, during, as the season goes on, there's things that you want to keep getting better at, and I know for myself there were some things I need to be more consistent with, and just being more focused, basically, just in my details and little things like that. It's nothing really too big. It's just things I just, need to focus on more, but those are things we can make better and get the right way.
Franklin appears to have clearly gotten the attention of his sophomore playmaker.
Definitely was humbled, but at the same time, I'm a competitor and I want to be out there on the field for my team and as much as possible. The Michigan game is over and done with now, and I'm ready to go on to Ohio State.
Franklin is counting on Lewis to be a playmaker and a leader if this offense is going to turn the corner.
I've been really pleased with him. He's one of the guys that I've met with, and he understands, as well as the coaching staff understand, that he, like a lot of guys, we need him to have a big role on our offense like it was early in the season for us to be the type of team and offense we want to be.
Prior to the Michigan game, Lewis was averaging 99 yards receiving per game. The Nittany Lions will need all of that, plus a little more, if they hope to upset a heavily favored Ohio State team. For the Blue White Tailgate Show, I'm John Stroh.
All right, we have to pick out a family clothesline player to watch. We have selected quarterback Christian Hackenberg. In part, you need, as we feel, your best player to step up and make big plays against a great defense. Christian Hackenberg, our family clothesline player to watch. We'll look at the defense after this.
Because of it, blitz coming from the corner. Hyde ran right by that and everybody else.
Okay, I got it. We have highlights from last year's game. I got it, okay?
Just got over the nightmares from that game. Wow.
I just started sleeping well 3 days ago. I got it. Okay. They are explosive, but this is a different, Penn State defense than what we've been watching.
Absolutely. I mean, the fact is that, Penn State has a very, very solid defense, arguably top 5 in the country. They're going to have all of that and then some to kind of slow them down.
Giveaway takeaway is huge. Ohio State, by the way, is a +5 this year, and Ohio State scored 49 points so far this year off of those takeaways. This is what Penn State's done. Yeah, -1, although that's changed since the opening couple of weeks of the season. Starting with Rutgers, I think they're a +4 since Rutgers. Todd, not only that, what can that takeaway part do in terms of setting up this offense?
Well, look, it's about decision-making to avoid those turnovers and the way you handle the football, but we're going to talk about how do you beat Ohio State. Well, in this particular situation, you better do all the little things right, and you better beat them in the penalty game, the turnover game, and field position game. So the turnovers play into the field position game. So we're going to talk about punting a little bit, all those types of things. Yeah. When you get an elite offense that's coming, you need to win the penalty battle, not make those mistakes, and win that field position battle. That's how turnovers play into it, whether they lead to points or not.
It's all part of that margin of error we've talked about. No question. All right, you created a few takeaways during your lifetime. And notice my car was missing last week.
That's a lie. It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
So talk a little bit about that.
Turnovers, creating turnovers. It's always about being around the ball. They need to have 11 guys be to the ball all the time. I mean, the fact is, if you're not around the ball, you're not going to the ball, you're not going to get any turnovers.
And for James Franklin, this is going to be a pivotal part of the game.
But overall, I mean, let's be honest, everybody's been really pleased with how our defense has played, but you always want more, and you always want to be better. And for us to go from a good defense to a great defense or elite defense, that's where the turnovers come in. That's where the turnovers come in.
Now you have to deal with the spread and how Barrett runs the spread. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the fact is he's doing great. And remember, he's the second-string quarterback. Okay, they're scoring 45 a game with the second-string quarterback. I mean, the fact is that they need to be in good position. They need to keep the ball in front of them. And again, it's like going to the ball is going to create turnovers.
Defensive line up front.
Well, yeah, they're going to be tested. Coach Meyer knows they're the #1 rushing defense in the country. He's mentioned that a couple times, but I think he likes that particular challenge, the way they come at it. And, Trey mentioned it's the second-string quarterback, J.T. Barrett. And weren't they supposed to have offensive line problems as well? I mean, but when you have a quarterback that can do all the things that J.T. Barrett can do, he masks a lot of issues that you have up front when the defensive line comes and chases them down. He can get around that edge. We talk about, holding that edge, keep him inside, keep him to the interior. It's just like we did with Devin Gardner, a couple of weeks ago.
No, we didn't do it. Actually, the kids were playing. We were watching them contain Devin Gardner.
We talked about it,
We talked about that.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
We talked about it.
Well, no, really, we talk a good game. We do. That's what we do. But the ends have to keep him pinched inside, right?
Yes. I mean, they have to contain them. They have to keep him between the hash marks, so to speak. You do not want this guy break and contain where he has the option to run and pass. He's a very good runner, and you got to make sure that you got him in front of him.
What about the linebackers? How do they have to play this? When you have a guy that can suddenly take off, how do they have to play? Because that can be a no man's land.
Well, the fact is, I mean, you have to be able to compete where you're able to defend against the pass, right? I mean, and be in a position. It's all about being in the right position. If you're not in the right position, you're going to have problems.
All right, so now you get into, obviously, the secondary and this grouping here. See, I think I'll get to the family clothesline players to watch in a moment, but what about the secondary in this game?
Well, I think they're going to be asked to do a lot in this particular game. We're going to see if Coach Shoop's going to dial up a lot of pressure to get to J.T. Barrett and force him to make quick decisions. If that happens, then it's about, keeping the receiver in front of you, maybe keeping the gains to a minimum. Ohio State's fantastic at yards after the catch, and I think tackling is going to be a really big deal. We talked about turnovers. And, Trey, you mentioned all 11 guys coming to the ball. Well, the first guy, hold the guy. The second guy, maybe, hold him too, and then the third guy, maybe go after the ball. But tackling is going to be a big issue for this game.
I think the family clothesline players to watch, I think, are the two corners. I think Williams and Lucas, if they can man up guys on the corners, that gives Bob Shoop options with the other 9 guys.
I absolutely agree. I mean, the fact is, anytime you have guys who can shut people down in the corner position, I mean, that creates a lot of options for you, certainly for Bob Shoop, who's very capable of running that defense.
Field position important. That means for James Franklin and the lines, the ability to get off consistent punts that are game-changing will help.
We just need to make sure that we're punting the ball more consistently. Our coverage has been pretty good. It's really just, the consistency in the punts with the location, with the distance. And we've had a few that we've shanked out of bounds that have put our defense in a tough spot. And then a lot of times our defense has actually held up and done a nice job, but then our offense is now starting backed up. So one problem compounds another.
And that is the definition of the domino effect. In the two losses, as we pointed out before, average drive start for the opponent, the 41-yard line. Penn State's average drive start, the 25. And 27 possessions, that's 432 yards. That's a lot to make up. Coming up, Todd and Trey talk with Marcus Ray. Later, I talk with Jim Lachey as we continue after this.
Welcome back to the Blue White Tailgate. Just Trey Bauer and myself. Gave Steve a little breather, right?
Yes, he needed a breather.
Get him off the
I
set.
needed a breather from him.
Yeah, get him off the set for just a little bit. And joining us now, we are pleased to welcome former Michigan Wolverine Marcus Ray. Marcus, thanks so much for joining us, a Big Ten analyst now. And look, Penn State, Ohio State, for the conference, this is always a big prime-time game. What are your thoughts as this one comes up tonight?
Oh, this is definitely a big-time matchup. I mean, Penn State's had plenty of time to prepare for this game. Obviously, Ohio State is on fire. JT Barrett is dialing up some big numbers and really executing Urban Meyer's offense. But I watched Penn State when they played against Michigan, and I honestly felt like they had a chance to win that game. They just couldn't score in the red zone in the first half, and then their offensive line just couldn't protect Hackenberg. They gave up 11 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, and interception. I mean, things just didn't go their way. But I think Penn State should be able to get the ball vertical on Ohio State's secondary, but they're going to have to give Hackenberg some time. And Bill Belton is going to have to break some runs, and just to keep that defense honest. But it's going to be a tough one for Penn State.
Marcus, hi, it's Trey Bauer. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, Trey.
Great. I guess my question for you is, there's been a lot going on at Michigan, and obviously as an alum and kid from Columbus going up to Ann Arbor, what are your thoughts as far as the whole Brady Hoke and Dave Brandon situation?
I pretty much stayed neutral and stayed out of the politics of it, but I will say that it's been very challenging to watch Michigan not be as great of a football program as it used to be. But I think Brady Hoke is the right man for the job, and I think the job that he's been asked to do is to shovel the driveway while it's still snowing outside, and that means that he has to win and rebuild a program from inside and out with the young team, and everyone doesn't have any patience. But as far as Dave Brandon, I'm not sure as far as all the things that he's done well or the areas he's failed as an AD, but as far as my personal relationship with Dave and professional, he's always making sure I was taken care of. And I only have positive things to say about it, but I just want to see the athletic department and the administration get on the same page so that Michigan can get back to winning football games.
Well, it had to be nice to have that sideline view of the Wolverines' victory over the Nittany Lions for a Michigan alum like yourself. What are some of the things you noticed? I understand you had some observations about the offensive line, some of the adjustments maybe that Michigan make, and then Penn State did not make adjustments with their offensive line. So your viewpoint of that situation at that game?
Well, I give Penn State a lot of credit because they used their off week to insert new formations and new blocking schemes, and I think that confused Michigan in the first half. I even overheard some of the coaches saying, hey, they're running some different things, they're blocking things a little differently. So the adjustment Michigan made was, instead of running defensive line stunts with a defensive end and a tackle, Michigan started running inside stunts in games with their 2 defensive tackles just to confuse the guards and the center. So that was one of the adjustments that Michigan made that I think helped their defense in the second half, and I don't think Penn State made their adjustments because they pretty much stuck to their game plan going into the game, and they gave up some big plays on defense. Penn State did, as far as that touchdown to Funchess, and then Gardner ran out of there a couple of times. So I just think that when you have 2 teams that are fairly even, it's always going to come down to the field position and turnover battle and who makes the most big plays. And I think Michigan made one more than Penn State. But I think Penn State can be very competitive once they get some depth and those offensive linemen play as a unit.
I agree with that. I think that Ohio State, Penn State is going to be very difficult for the Nittany Lions at home. What are your thoughts, or what are the keys to Penn State beating Ohio State?
Well, number one, they're going to have to possess the ball a lot longer and extend the drives, convert third downs, but they're going to need to hit some big pass plays. They're going to need to flip the field. And if they can get 30 or 40 yards on a reception by Lewis or Hamilton, I think that will help. But they're not going to outscore Ohio State, but they're going to have to dial up some defensive pressure to get to Barrett. If you let him sit in the pocket, obviously he'll hurt Penn State's defense. But Penn State's going to have to get some turnovers. They're going to have to get some sacks and big plays on offense because they're not good enough to just drive 80 yards without making a mistake versus Ohio State's front four. So that's pretty much what I think Penn State has to do in order for them to have a chance.
All right, Big Ten analyst and former Michigan Wolverine, Marcus Ray. I'm sure it's not going to break your heart if the Nittany Lions pull off an upset over the Buckeyes at Beaver Stadium. Thanks so much for joining us, Marcus.
All right, take care, fellas.
Thanks, Marcus. Bye-bye.
All right, yep, enjoy yourself. And quickly, Health South injury update coming off a bye week. They look pretty good, look pretty healthy. Hopefully we'll see Miles Diffin back. For Trey, I'm Todd. We'll be right back here with more on the Blue White Tailgate.
Whiteout, Urban, but the first two aren't going to help much.
Yeah.
just no, we might be able to use some stormtroopers
just
out there.
opinion, Todd, since Virginia Tech, they've been on a roll.
Pretty impressive, and they have to look back at that game and just go, what happened in that one? I know J.T. Barrett was getting used to running the offense. That is a really bad loss on their schedule, especially when you see what the Hokies have done since then, just lost to Pitt. So, but yeah, it's a very different team than was out there. What an embarrassment of riches at quarterback, right? To have J.T. Barrett step in after Braxton Miller, the two-time Conference Player of the Year, go down.
And haven't skipped a beat. He's been incredibly efficient. We'll talk about him in a moment. Urban Meyer, of course, has come into the conference. He's now in his third year. James Franklin's now in the conference. I believe because of the connections each one of them has down south, because the population has shifted, that recruiting-wise, Trey, they're going to change the dynamics of the speed quotient in this conference. You can see it in Ohio State. You can start to see it in Penn State. I think these are going to be the two leaders in terms of really bringing widespread speed into this league.
I totally agree. I mean, the fact is that they have a different realm of experience. Certainly with Urban being down in Florida, James Franklin has been down south as well. And the fact is, you got to go where you can get the players. I mean, the players right now are in the South.
Yeah, and that's where they each have great connections there. Has Barrett been something else?
Wow.
I give him credit. I mean, the Virginia Tech thing was the second game.
Yeah.
But boy, has he learned.
You know, and you hear rumblings that when Miller went down, they weren't sweating it because they know Barrett is actually a more accurate passer than Braxton Miller. And he's proven that right away as a freshman. He's leading the conference with 62% completion percentage. His passing efficiency through the roof, 182, 20 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. So, you know, usually with a redshirt freshman forced into action, questionable decision making. You know, you got big leads. Usually it maybe tends you to, okay, let's take some more risks. We know we got a big lead. This guy continually just gets the job done. And when you say a redshirt freshman, is this efficient? That's the word you're using about somebody that is that talented? What a dangerous combination.
Has a lot of speed with Ezekiel Elliott at tailback, the way they use Dontre Wilson, the way they use Jalen Marshall. But then you go to the wideouts with Thomas and Smith. They had big play capability, and then Nick Van Ed had 2 big touchdown catches last week against Rutgers.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that Rutgers, the fact that Ohio State has as many playmakers as they do, is really unbelievable. I mean, to me, you know, they're in the discussion for the top 4 for the playoff, I think.
I think that's what's happened in all this. I think Michigan State and Ohio State have brilliantly put the Big Ten back into the discussion.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in 2 weeks for that one. It's at Michigan State. So, you know, Ohio State has their most difficult games left on the road. I mean, at Penn State, it's going to be a tough environment to play at, then at Michigan State, and then at Minnesota, who's proven to be a pretty decent squad as well.
But the Big Ten's back in the discussion. We'll see if Penn State ruins that party at all. We'll find out. Offensive line has really come on for them. This is an area where, look, sophomores, I thought they were okay up front. Juniors, they were great up front. Last year, I thought they were special. Now they've had to rebuild it a bit, and they've rebuilt it nicely.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that, again, it goes back to the recruiting. Like, where are you going to get the players? And the fact that, you know, I think they've done a great job of recruiting. They've got playmakers. They've got guys that have watched really good guys perform in front of them, I think is really important.
James Franklin knows that when he looks at Ohio State, there'll be a familiar Penn State face on the sideline in Larry Johnson.
Tremendous respect for Larry. Tremendous respect for the previous regime, all the positive things that happened on the football field, all the positive things that happened in the classroom. But, you know, That's kind of where it is. We're trying to get our players prepared for the schemes and the environment and the things that they're going to have to face.
Well, Larry Johnson gets to coach Joey Bosa. He inherited this incredible talent. 9 tackles for losses, 5.5 sacks, and James Franklin says 97 is a force.
Yeah, he's got a rare combination. I think, you talk about a guy who's 6'5", 280 pounds, and really has some quickness and is sudden. He's able to play with quickness. He's able to play with power. And a lot of times you can find some guys that are extremely strong and powerful and explosive at the point of attack, but maybe don't have the quickness as a pass rusher.
And some good linebackers behind him. Lee, the freshman, has stepped in with Trey Johnson now out. Played really well. Big play guy. Grant obviously in the middle. But then there's Josh Perry on the outside. Good-looking player.
Well, we like to be linebacker U, Penn State, right? I mean, certainly Ohio State has cranked out many, many talented players. Ryan Shazier now with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They certainly have a lot of talent in their linebacking core and in the secondary. And you mentioned Bosa. Let's just hope that he's not in Penn State's huddle, and you're wondering why there's 12 guys in a huddle, and he's in their backfield all day long. Keep an eye on 97. I mean, he can blow up a lot of stuff that's happening right away.
Yeah, if you're going to take the top 5 linebackers in the Big Ten, 2 of them will be on the field between Perry and Hull.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think anybody would even question that. The fact is, I mean, as a homer, as a Penn State guy, I'll take Mike Hull over anybody else.
Also pretty good at safety as well. Geno Lewis knows attacking that group will be one of the keys.
Well, they're very, very athletic. They got speed and things like that. We're just going to go through practice, get better each day, and, just prepare for them as much as we can, and, go out there and just know when the ball's in the air, we got to come down and make the plays that we need to make.
Tyvis Powell made a big interception last year against Michigan. Von Bell is another guy. They're really good at corner. Grant has 6 career interceptions, had a big one last week against Rutgers. And Eli Apple has 2 on the other side. You notice that they have had a lot of big plays, and several of them are made by redshirt freshmen on this defense.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that they're obviously a talented group of players. I mean, and we meaning Penn State, cannot turn the ball over. Christian has to make good decisions. He doesn't make good decisions. That's going to be a long night.
They like to pressure the outsides, too. I mean, so they know they've got good safeties. When you have good safeties to rely on, you can take a few more chances with your corners knowing that you're covered. They like to put some pressure on the outside.
Yeah, Luke Fickell, Chris Ash, they've combined as co-defensive coordinators, and they've turned this group loose.
Yeah.
And that's been a big part of it, turning them loose.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the fact is, it's like, it's kind of easy to coach talent. When you've got talented players, it's about putting them in a position to make plays, and that's what they're doing.
Our producer, John Stroh, was just saying that the other day at the meeting. This show would be so much easier if I could coach talent.
Yeah.
Coming up, I will talk with someone who actually had a lot of talent, Jim Lachey. We'll talk with him, the Ohio State Buckeye analyst, after this. Welcome back. Great to have you with us. I'm very pleased to be joined by the outstanding analyst for Ohio State football on the Buckeye Radio Network, Jim Lachey. Jim, welcome. Great to hear you.
Thanks, Steve. It's great to be back and looking forward to the big game this weekend.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the Ohio State defense. One thing I noticed that Paul Keels and you were talking about on Saturday was not just the big plays they were making, but it was the number of redshirt freshmen making big plays. Discuss how Urban has been able to integrate them into the defense and how they've stepped up.
If you look back at some of the guys that for Ohio State that played in that pass game, they rolled in 10 defensive linemen, and that's a strategy that, they want to have a lot of guys that they can roll in. And, they got into some depth. Some of those guys are true freshmen, like Jalen Holmes has done a nice job, number 10 for us. He's been getting some significant playing. Not significant, but more than you would expect out of a freshman. Michael Hill, another youngster, redshirt freshman, stepped up and made some nice plays. But when you got guys up front like Joey Bosa and Michael Bennett, Steve Miller, Rashad Frazier, who got nicked up a little bit in that game, and then inside Adolphus Washington and Tommy Shutt doing some nice things too. They have a lot of depth, and they've been playing a lot, so that helps out everything. If you have a good front, allows the linebackers to go out there and make some plays. I think our secondary is very athletic, but as you know, we replaced a lot of guys from last year, and good or bad, that defense, made a lot of plays, gave up a lot of yards again last year. This year, been taking the ball away, getting some interceptions, and, being spot on with their coverage.
Hi, Jim. It's Trey Bauer. How are you?
Doing good, Trent. Thanks.
Just real quick, let's just switch a little bit for the offense. Do you think that this Ohio State offense could have scored 45 against your Columbus Destroyers in 2007?
You know what? It's amazing how when you talk about, we were talking about that a couple games ago, and you almost have to hold serve like it did in arena football if you don't score every time down the field. And that's the way the offense has started out the last 4 games, opening drives, taking it down to the end zone. Ever since the loss to Virginia Tech, they've had a little bit different mindset. And I think Coach Meyer challenged his coaches on the offensive staff to be creative, come up with a pretty good game plan. And then, obviously the execution that the offense has had under the leadership of J.T. Barrett, just under 6 starts under his belt, has done some fantastic things with 20 touchdowns thrown already. So, we lost Braxton, man. Everybody was shuddering here in Columbus, Ohio, and now 6 games later, everybody is like, wow, look what J.T. Barrett, he's been sitting on the shelf for 2 years, and look what he's been able to produce. So it's offensively, the coaches have done a good job. J.T. has really, played above his head, and then they've got an offensive line with 4 new starters that really stepped up, and under the guidance of Ed Warner, the offensive line coach, have really played some good football. And when you mix that in all together, some good things will happen offensively, which they have for the last 4 games.
Jim, was the playbook early simplified with a new quarterback in there? And if so, how wide open is it now just through game experience?
Well, the number that Coach Meyer put on it was 70% greater than what it was during the Navy game. So to me, that says they've expanded it a lot. And again, having a first-time starter versus Navy with their unique offense running the option. I don't think they wanted to go out there and turn the ball over and do a lot of things crazy. They just wanted to be able to pound the football. And, Navy did a decent job of stopping the run, so they had to open it up a little bit. But since Virginia Tech, I think they have gained a little bit more confidence, week in and week out. I think each week I've seen a little bit new wrinkle that they've added. Now, again, we had 2 bye weeks within a 3-week span, so they had some time to work on it. But, yeah, I think they are expanding it because you can see offensively with different formations, different people getting the ball, and, guys stepping up and making some plays. But I think as they mature, you'll see it grow a little bit more. Coach Warner, again, kind of can, relate it like this for the listeners, that you got to have Algebra 1 before you can get to Algebra 2. And, at the beginning of the season, they were still in Algebra 1, but they've advanced a little bit to the next section.
What do you think the chances? I mean, this is kind of like an unfair fight, this Ohio State team against Penn State on Saturday, but be that as it may, what do you think the chances of Ohio State running the table and being in the national picture for the playoff?
The perception of the Big Ten right now hurts a lot, and certainly the playoffs, I think these guys are added to. I know Evan Spencer, a wide receiver, said this week in interviews that the playoffs have started. So you got to win every game. I think that the chances for it to happen, I don't know. It just depends on how everything else plays out. But I would like to think if there's a 1-loss Big Ten team out there, whether it's us or Michigan State or, Nebraska or who else, Wisconsin, or not Wisconsin, but Minnesota, whoever wins the championship would have a fighting chance to get into the 14 playoff just out of respect for the Big Ten. So, yeah, As you guys know, Penn State's not easy on the road. That's nothing you can chalk up. These guys know going in front of a whiteout, 8 o'clock game, 110,000, that's going to be tough, especially with a quarterback like Hackenberg, who's made a lot of great plays this year. Now, hasn't gotten those into the end zone, but, they're capable. So, Ohio State has to take it week by week, and I think that's how the best teams do it.
Jim, as always, an absolute pleasure. Appreciate it.
All right, Steve, looking forward to seeing you and Jack this weekend, and take care, Trent.
Thanks so much. We'll come back with more after this. Well, at least we have better highlights.
There you go.
It's about
Penn State highlights.
About time.
Yeah.
I begged the entire show. So that... Well, we'll put that under the good.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's time for the good, the bad, and the ugly. You get good this week.
2 weeks in a row. Good news. With 6 straight weeks of football. No more bye weeks. They're in the past. They're behind us. And we're only 2 W's from being bowl eligible. Let's remember, we finally get to go back to a bowl, Penn State, so they need 2 more W's to get there.
Okay, bad.
The bad is that Penn State is playing at whiteout in front of 110,000 people against the number 2 quarterback who's thrown for 20 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. So, I mean, that's bad. What would happen if Braxton Miller was playing?
Well, we'll find out on Saturday night. And the ugly. Well, the ugly is, was it really pass interference on the Notre Dame Florida State thing? Wow. Actually, it
was horrific. It was a terrible call. I thought it was a terrible call.
I would just like to say to Notre Dame, you wanted to be in the ACC. Yeah. So that's what you got. Okay, so let's go to the top 25. Here's a bunch of games that Trey cares deeply about. So, Todd, I'll start with you. Ole Miss plays at LSU.
Death Valley. I don't know. I think Ole Miss's defense, defense travels really, really well. So I think Ole Miss is going to take care of LSU. I don't think they can generate enough offense to beat the Rebels.
What?
Care meter, 2, 3, what?
I don't care. I do think LSU is going to pull a huge upset.
Texas at Kansas State. Kansas State, to its credit, almost beat Auburn earlier in the year.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that I would like to see Texas play well for Charlie Strong. I think he's a good guy. He's one of the good guys in college football, and hopefully they can figure that out.
Interesting how Kansas State is the Big 12 team of the week. They seem to rotate every single week who's the leader in that conference. Baylor's knocked off. Now let's push Kansas State into the forefront. They're going to have issues getting a team into the playoff.
Yeah. USC at Utah. USC, of course, brand name, but Utah's playing some good football.
Absolutely.
Especially on special teams.
You just took the words right out of my mouth. Special teams. They get it done in special teams. But USC, they're coming on strong. They've got a lot of talent, and I think the Trojans are going to prevail.
All right, let's go to the Big Ten now. Rutgers at Nebraska. I know you're geared.
Who schedules that? I mean, this is Rutgers' first year in the Big Ten. Yeah. They got them playing, Ohio State. They got them playing Penn State. They got them playing at Nebraska. I mean, give me a break. They're going to get clobbered. All right.
Maryland at Wisconsin. Maryland's in here next week. Wisconsin plays physical football.
I like your point about that. We were talking about that. Let the Badgers beat up the Terps a little bit. Maryland's got a good offense, though. They've had a lot of injuries to overcome, so for them, we were talking about not many big teams in the rankings, Big Ten teams in the rankings. If Maryland can somehow pull an upset on the road, they might pop into the top 25.
Michigan at Michigan State.
I think Michigan State has too much for them. I think Michigan State wins. I would hope that it's close, but I don't think it's going to be.
All right, so now let's get to the keys of the game. Penn State, Ohio State, Saturday night, Beaver Stadium, kickoff set for 8:11. White out for the game. Your keys, how can Penn State make this happen?
The only way that Penn State is going to make this even competitive, in my opinion, is the fact is if they can control the ball as far as field position. I mean, James Franklin said it earlier about the punting game. We can't let them have the ball on their own 40-yard line and vice versa, us being in a problem or deep in our own territory. It's not going to happen.
All right. Well, for me, it's a game of efficiency. The defense obviously has to play well in this. Field position becomes very important. Giveaway, takeaway has to be on the plus side of this. Not only that, though, but Penn State is going to have to get touchdowns in this thing. This is not going to be something where, let's try and win the thing 9-7. They're going to have to get some touchdowns.
I'm going to piggyback on that point to say the most basic of things for football is points, right? They've only scored over 20 points one time since 2001 against Ohio State. Yeah. I don't care how they do it. It could be an interception. It could be a fumble, special teams. They've got to score over 20 points and let that defense go to work on Ohio State.
So there is the setup for you Saturday night at Beaver Stadium. The Nittany Lions taking on Ohio State. As Todd said, no more bye weeks. It's 6 straight from here on out. The whiteout, we hope you enjoy it. For Trey, Todd, I'm Steve. Thanks for joining us for the Blue Light Tailgate presented by Coors Light.